Okay, so here is another invention of mine. It's a cable that allows my iPad to type text onto any connected device that supports keyboards, basically. Um, this is something I primarily use as a teacher. I have a vast library of predefined or automatically generated feedback comments in shortcuts on my iPads that I use to grade. But then sometimes I'm in the classroom and a student gives me their laptop to ask me to look through a text while they're writing it, and I want access to the same ability to send over properly formatted feedback comments that are actually useful in that setting as well. And anything that would require me to install software, establish a Bluetooth connection, etc., is basically going to take too much time. So this is one single cable that I connect to their device, and then I'm up and running. In practice, it works like this. So if I, for instance, select grammar here and the literary present tense comment, then that copies the comment to the clipboard, and then I normally use it on the iPad itself. But in this case, I can hit the button to type it over USB instead, and then it will go until it's written that comment out. So the way this works is by using not one, but actually two Raspberry Pis. This one is a Zero, and this one is a PIco, more specifically a PIco clone that has a USB-C port instead of the god-awful micro USB on the official one. Neither of these has wireless because it doesn't need to. But in theory, you could probably set something up that would do the same thing wireless as well. So they're each powered by the device they're connected to. So the Pico is powered by in this case, the Android phone, and this one is connected to and powered by the iPad. So the Zero is just running Raspbian without any desktop environment, but it's set up in USB Ethernet mode, which means that once connected over USB, it basically establishes a USB Ethernet connection to the connecting device. And iOS, unlike Android, has very good support for that sort of thing. So it just shows up as an Ethernet connection in settings. It will establish a local connection that doesn't interfere with Wi-Fi or anything like that. And the host name of the Raspberry Pi, which is hitcable.local, will also work on iOS and like on Android. And then anything you could do over a normal network connection to the Raspberry Pi would work over this local connection. So this doesn't need to have internet or anything like that. It will just work. So SSH, VNC, all that sort of thing works over the USB Ethernet connection. But in this case, the Pi Zero is running a Flask server and establishing a HTTP endpoint that the iPad, specifically shortcuts, can use HTTP post to send information to. So it can grab the clipboard and then post that information to the endpoint created by the Flask server. So that's how the information gets from the iPad to the Pico over this USB connection that's both power and USB Ethernet. And then once the Pico has it, it will run a Python script that will do a couple of things for compatibility due to some language issues with English not being my native language. So it's set up to scrub some characters and things like that. And then it will send the string to the Pico over this connection right here, which is just a two-wire connection for UART, transmit and receive. Frankly, it just needs transmit. and then the PIco will receive that and buffer it until it receives the entire message, which doesn't take very long. And then it will start typing that onto the connected device by using the standard HID human interface device library found in CircuitPython. And that's the process, but a lot of setup, but essentially you could see it's quite quick. This needs to boot into, Linux, Raspbian. So generally I connect this a little bit ahead of time, and then this what's hot swappable, for lack of a better term. And I can also, this is detachable unlike this one, so I can just use a longer cable instead. And since this uses the HID protocol, the Android device just thinks this is a keyboard. It will essentially work on anything that requires or supports a USB keyboard. And because HID is such a vulnerable system, that's why rubber duckies and bad USBs exist. This will just go past any sort of security measure other than disabling the USB port. Not that this is malicious in itself, but basically explains why this is such a more feasible solution than having to deal with anything else that requires either a Bluetooth connection or anything like that. So there you have it, a very niche invention, but it's one that's actually very, very useful for me in my daily work life as a teacher.